There's a volcano in Italy that could destroy everything. And I mean everything. I'm talking about Mount Vesuvius, which is an active volcano that's just outside of Naples. It's so dangerous because it could trigger what scientists call a super eruption. And unlike normal volcanoes, the effects of this one wouldn't be regional or even national. This could be a global catastrophe. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted and killed thousands of people. But that was nothing compared to what could happen today. If it were to blow up again, its destruction would reach far beyond the Italian peninsula. So what makes this volcano so special? What would happen if it did erupt? And how can we prevent that from happening? To answer those questions, let's take a look at the science behind one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world. Let me start by saying that the chances of this volcano erupting anytime soon are extremely low. Like you're more likely to get struck by lightning than have Vesuvius go off. But just because something probably won't happen doesn't mean that it can't, or even that it has never happened in the past. In fact, this volcano is believed to have had 3 super eruptions during the Pleistocene epoch between 2.6 million and 11,700 years ago. The largest of these lasted for 6 days and sent over 300 cubic miles of ash into the air. For comparison, the Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines in 1991 only ejected around 4.8 cubic miles of material. And while Pinatubo was one of the deadliest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century, the real danger of supervolcanoes isn't just their lava flows. It's what they call the fallout. Volcanic ash contains very fine particles of pulverized rock and minerals. When these particulates enter the atmosphere, they reflect and absorb sunlight, which can have serious consequences for the climate. Even small eruptions can lead to a so-called volcanic winter, but the effects can last for years and even decades. In some cases, the drop in temperature can be as much as 2 degrees Celsius below average. So imagine what would happen if a supervolcano erupted. Well, scientists have actually imagined this scenario quite a lot, and they aren't exactly sure what would happen. They have come up with some pretty crazy ideas, though. In 2013, researchers from the Smithsonian Institution published a paper on the effects of a massive eruption in the Mediterranean. Their model estimated that Mount Vesuvius could eject 36,000 cubic miles of material, which is 10 times the volume of the largest recent eruption in the region. Ash from the explosion would spread all throughout the Mediterranean and even make its way into the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Since so much of the sun's energy would be reflected back into space, the Earth's average surface temperature would drop by 2.3 degrees Celsius. Now here's where things get weird. While the immediate effect of this cooling would be devastating, leading to widespread crop failure and famine, after a few years, some parts of the world would experience record high temperatures. This is because less reflective clouds would allow more heat from the sun to reach the Earth's surface. Overall, though, the prognosis is grim. According to the report, this level of cooling would kill off around 90% of the plankton in the ocean. Without the foundation of the marine food chain, most of the fish would die, along with many species of birds and mammals that feed on them. Humanity would need to rely on artificial light to grow crops, and even then, food shortages would continue for decades. Okay, but what if we prepared for such an eruption? Would we be able to stop it? Well, the short answer is no. But there is a technology called magma migration that might buy us some time. It works by drilling several miles beneath the Earth's surface and pumping cold water into the magma chamber. This would solidify part of the molten rock, creating a barrier between the magma and the surface. Essentially, we could redirect the flow of magma in the same way that dams are used to control the flow of water. However, since magma chambers are often filled with pockets of gas, scientists are concerned that this could trigger an even more violent eruption. So the risk is not worth taking, unless we are willing to sacrifice the entire city of Naples, which is kind of out of the question. So this is the ultimate doomsday device, a volcano capable of ending all human life on Earth. So let's wrap this video up by looking at how and why this volcano formed. Mount Vesuvius is located in a place called the Ring of Fire, which is a horseshoe-shaped belt around the Pacific Ocean where volcanoes and earthquakes are common. More specifically, it sits on top of the Eurasian and African tectonic plates, which are slowly colliding with each other. As the denser African plate sinks beneath the Eurasian plate, the rock begins to melt, which creates magma. That magma then collects in a chamber below the surface. Eventually, the pressure becomes too great, and the magma forces its way up through weak spots in the crust. Over time, this process has created a large mountain range known as the Southern Apennines. Mount Vesuvius is just one of several volcanoes in this range, but it's the only one that's still active. Now I know what you're thinking. If Mount Vesuvius is still active, then the area surrounding it should be uninhabited. And you would be right, except for the fact that the whole region is home to around 3 million people. Not only is it densely populated, but the surrounding area is also extremely fertile, which means that crops grow very easily there. This is because volcanic soil is rich in nutrients like potassium, phosphorus, and magnesium. In ancient times, the people living near Vesuvius didn't know any of this, of course. They just knew that their fields were incredibly productive and the fruit they grew tasted amazing. They also didn't know that every 2,000 years or so, the volcano would have a small eruption that would cover the region in ash. In fact, the people living in the shadow of Vesuvius thrived there for centuries without ever realizing how lucky they were. However, in 79 AD, the volcano erupted in such a violent manner that it wiped out the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. To this day, we don't know exactly what caused this eruption. Some experts believe it was the result of unusually high gas pressure. Others think it may have been caused by an earthquake. Whatever the cause, the effects were catastrophic. Thousands of people died, and the entire region was covered in a thick layer of ash. It would be another 1,700 years before the site of Pompeii was even discovered. Today, the area around Vesuvius is home to several other cities, including Naples, which is one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. If the volcano were to erupt today, the entire city would be destroyed. But what if we could somehow move the volcano? Well, it turns out that's possible too. A group of researchers from Durham University have recently proposed a plan to relocate Vesuvius to a safer location. They suggest digging a tunnel from the current magma chamber to an inactive volcano further away from civilization. From there, they would pump water into the magma chamber to solidify the rock and then bring it to the surface. The solidified rock would then be transported to the new magma chamber using a combination of drills and conveyor belts. Finally, the old magma chamber would be filled with water and turned into a lake. It sounds crazy, I know, but the researchers say that it's technically feasible. They also claim that the entire process could be completed within a human lifetime. So maybe someday soon, we will be able to sleep soundly, knowing that there's a giant volcano somewhere deep in the Mediterranean instead of right outside our window. I hope you enjoyed learning about one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world. Thanks for watching and see you next time.